Welcome to the RevOps Co-op, and today we're talking about why you too should get technical with Nicole Smith. Nicole, thanks for joining us, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Glad to be here. So my name is Nicole Smith. I'm the Director of Revenue Operations at Greenlight Guru. I've been here since the beginning of January of this year and have been in the sales operations and revenue operations practice for a while now. I also have a very strong background in Salesforce and the Salesforce platform, along with obviously some other sales technologies that are widely used. So really excited today to, just kind of talk about how that can help elevate the revenue operations function.
Fabulous. So when we're talking about career growth and what people really should be adding to their resume to make themselves marketable, what is like the number one thing you think people are looking for right now? It's like a softball lob.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So, revenue operations is still like growing and being defined. So as cheesy as it sounds, we're really in a spot where we still get to be a part of what that definition is. And what I'm seeing more in the operations space is, as new technologies are being delivered and developed every day and new features are coming out every day, having some experience with that technology is becoming more and more prevalent as a requirement for different companies. And so being able to really dig into those details is extremely important. I think additionally, from an operational perspective, we're consistently trying to refine processes and make them better, and understanding how the technology helps us is really key in making that happen. It just gives us a different sense and a different viewpoint with which to work, where we can make our processes a lot more effective.
It's interesting. A few years ago, when one of the first companies I was with started developing RevOps, it was BI, really, revenue BI. And we're seeing this trend where more and more companies are kind of jumping on the bandwagon and realizing that there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained if you give them systems and enablement and the other traditional operations functions as well. So I'm kind of excited that that's where they're trending, and it's good to see that tools, skill sets are something that are really not going away.
And as I hire for roles as well, that's something I really look for. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an expert in those technologies. It's the willingness to jump in and really get in there and truly understanding what it can do for the business. Again, like there's just so many technologies out there at this point that, being able to leverage that to our advantage is a game changer. We can develop processes all day, but operationalizing them is totally different. And the more we leverage technology, the easier it makes it for our reps to sell, which means it makes it a lot easier for our buyers to buy.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, it used to be that marketing ops people stayed in marketing ops and only dealt with marketing automation, and salespeople or sales operations people only dealt with Salesforce. I didn't get the memo, so I moved around a lot. And what people didn't know at the time that I think they're finally figuring out now is that those skills are transferable. Right?
Completely. Yep.
Like ultimately you're dealing with a database that has information in it with a UI on top of it. And then you have to figure out how people use it and how to make it easier to use. So it just really encouraged people not to paint themselves in a corner on accident and say no to opportunities with different systems.
Well, and I think to that point too, especially as revenue operations continues to grow, it's not just about sales anymore. And it's not, you even look now at going all the way through customer success and renewals, right? Yep. Retention has become just as, if not more important than acquisition, right? And so being able to expand your skill set from top of the funnel all the way through renewal and through that entire go-to-market engine is huge. I think additionally, you have folks that really need to be in lockstep to make sure that we have a solid process in place where it's kind of like where the buyers get the warm and fuzzies every time, right? Like there's just a solid transition and it's easy. And so it's really like marketing ops to sales ops to CS ops, all those need to work together. And so having understanding of how those different systems work, because they are very different, is a really important component to that.
So let's talk about some of the systems that are highest in demand. I know we talked about how these skills are translatable, but you are at a bit of an advantage if you're working with a system that kind of is so complex that it encompasses the functions of the other complementing competitors.
Sure.
So let's talk about that a little bit. CRM, marketing automation platform, and customer success.
Yeah, so I don't think it's any surprise that Salesforce is the real game changer there. Salesforce is Salesforce for a reason. And now when you go on their website, you can see all the different certifications that they allow you to earn. And I mean, it is the market leader. Everyone is using it. What you can do with Salesforce, it's so robust. Like you got to get on the train. It's not going anywhere. It's continuously getting better. They're always acquiring new systems and platforms and technology that they're incorporating into the existing platform. And so really being able to understand how that functions and everything you can do with it is so key, right? And a lot of times what ends up happening is Salesforce gets brought into an organization and they throw somebody in front and says, who wants to work on this, right? And that's what ends up happening. And it can cause a lot of downstream issues. And so if you can be one of those people that can really embrace the technology and understand the back end and what you can truly do with it, it's a game changer.
And that's why I love the RevOps co-op so much, is people are so willing to share best practices that people need to know in order not to make those huge mistakes when they're first responsible for a system. Because like you said, a lot of us get thrown from the frying pan into the fire and we're just like, wow.
Well, yeah. And I think too, like, everybody's system, Salesforce is so advanced and so robust that everybody's system is a little bit different. So you get experiences from every level on what works and what didn't work. And that's the key, is there's so many ways to do it wrong in Salesforce because there's so many options, right? And so really leveraging your network and finding ways to build out Salesforce the right way that works best for your business. That resource is great to have.
Yeah, and I've been an admin for like Zoho CRM, HubSpot, Sugar CRM, a lot of other instances, and they translate. Like ultimately, they even call things the same things for the most part. Yeah. I mean, HubSpot's deals, Salesforce's opportunities, tomato. So yeah, definitely. But I think marketing automation is a little bit more nuanced, but not to an extreme where you can still move from platform to platform. I think Marketo is probably the market leader right now.
Yeah, I would say so. I do think HubSpot's really doing a great job of catching up to that. And just, the way that I see it, like they're really positioning themselves as a total and complete CRM as well. It definitely works a little bit differently than Salesforce does. And Salesforce gives you that extra level of like advanced development and technology and things that you can do it. Everything integrates to Salesforce.
Pretty. The UI is pretty too. They have that partnership ecosystem like you were mentioning, but I think visually it's just, it looks like you're going back a little bit in time with HubSpot. It does what it needs to do, but it's a little creaky.
Yeah, it is. But I really think that they're, I really think they're continuing to advance. They're always developing new features that can really help a lot of companies. I mean, it's a lot of competing features and stuff that's actually built in the platform that will actually help companies. So it's really exciting to see, how they continue to grow and make themselves more and more relevant. I am seeing HubSpot more as a marketing automation platform these days than I am a Marketo or an Eloqua.
Yeah, I mean, Marketo is so expensive. I think is one of because I'm sure you it sounds like you also work with smaller companies quite a bit. And they just price themselves out, and it's not intuitive. You get in
No.
there and you have all these folder structure systems instead of a visual workflow, and
Yeah,
kind of
and
clunky.
HubSpot, they just make it really easy to use.
Yep.
It's really quite simple to set up. Like the integrations that they allow for, they really do a great job with that. Obviously, the integration to Salesforce is pretty it's pretty simple and really easy. Like anything we need to set up, we can do it really quickly, which is incredibly convenient.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of customer success, I think the two major ones I've seen in the market are probably Salesforce and Zendesk, but there are quite a few others out there. Again, really translatable. Once you know one, you can kind of figure out the other ones.
Yeah, I think Gainsight's probably the biggest player.
Oh, yeah, good
yeah.
point. Good
Yeah,
point.
Gainsight's huge, and it's just becoming more of a regular player. Zendesk is I think in relation, like between Zendesk and Salesforce, that's really where you're looking at customer support. Gainsight is going to give you a lot more visibility into the health of the customer, right? It just gives you a different component that I think is much more relative, especially as it relates to retention. As I said before, retention is such a big deal, and it's become more important than acquisition. Like you can go and get customers, it's keeping those customers. And with all this new technology, you never know. Like people are always coming up bigger, faster, stronger, and companies are no exception.
Yeah, and we've kind of been cycling in and out of a bit of a recession lately. And whenever a recession comes along, companies remember that customers they're a great place to mine additional revenue.
Yeah.
And they're so critical to the growth of the business. So, yes, 100%. We're just agreeing everywhere. Yeah, that's awesome. So, where should people be going to ramp up those skills?
Great question. So from a Salesforce perspective, I don't think you can really get better than Trailhead. The platform that they've really developed and embraced is their own, obviously, but they make it fun. If you are somebody that's really into gamification and getting points and getting reward like I am, then you love it, right?
Yeah,
I think another really great piece about Trailhead that's a head above the rest is that you get to get your own developer instance.
Yep.
You get to actually try and learn, put into practice what you're doing. And it actually tests to make sure that you're doing the right thing and that you're doing what it's trying to teach you. And I think that's really important. I know everybody learns differently. For myself, I learn by doing. And so being able to have that available to me has really helped to I can run tests, I can go look at stuff, understand how to do it, and then put it into my organization as well.
Yeah, and I recently did my certification maintenance, and it's funny because I read through the documentation and I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then I got in to do it and I'm like, this is game changing.
Yeah. And you just read about even the new stuff they have in the releases and you're like, that sounds cool. And then you go into the certifications and you're like, whoa, that is so neat.
You can make fields conditionally visible. That is rad. Yeah, no, that's I've been so excited lately about that. It's kind of sad. But I will also point out that Marketo has a lot of free documentation online. They have their university. HubSpot has always been a great resource for content.
Yep.
And they do have free orgs. So if you can't get into a different marketing automation platform or CRM, HubSpot is great. Get a free instance, play around in it, and do the Trailhead stuff. That it's just the writers are even funny.
Yes.
So
I mean, they have people dedicated to this, and it's real, and they just make it fun. I'm waiting for Outreach to kind of do the same thing. Outreach just came out with a certification this year, and I'm really waiting. Outreach, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to the integration. There's a lot to different ways that you can leverage it. And a lot of times sales enablement platforms in general just are set up to send emails. And there's a lot more that can happen, a lot that you can automate it to be a really seamless experience, to improve, response rates and all of that. And so really being able to get in there and understand how that works is huge. I'd be really excited to see Outreach do the same type of thing.
Yeah, and I'd love for them to do that with some chat bots out there and things
Yeah,
like that, because I think there's a lot of room for optimization.
for sure.
So we talked about systems administration. Let's talk about some other skill sets people should really think about as they develop their career. And we can talk about both like the harder skills like analytics and then the soft skills. What do you feel is important to build out like a well-rounded ops career?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand the why behind things. And I think that's just through going through operations and understanding how things function. Um, why are we measuring this? What are we solving for with it? Is it necessary? A lot of times we get requests of, hey, I need this field. Why? What are we doing here? And half the time it's not populated. It gets put into a layout. And then before we know it, we have, 300 different fields that aren't really doing anything. It's making the user experience harder on our reps and on all of our users, really. And so being able to understand the why behind things and what the end goal is. And that's part of actually growing in the operations function and getting into more strategic roles where, we can see kind of how this is going to affect the bottom line. I think too, when you're able to marry it with the technology and that you can start to see, okay, well, now I understand what this looks like. Based on this, I can see that the VP of sales is going to ask for this in 6 months. So I'm going to build this out now and make sure based on what we're looking at, this is the results it may drive. Let's go ahead and get this in place now. So when they ask for the data, we already have it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunities on the co-op again to talk to your peers and be like, here's the stage I'm at. What are the next thing you guys usually see? So we've seen it play out over and over again. Like at this point, like at around 50 people, that's when they shut down the admin licenses and only give it to one person.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, one company I went to, 75% of the user base was an admin. They didn't even know it. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah. You get to a certain threshold and it's like, okay, people are changing things without telling other people and it's a mess. We need to trust people until they give you a reason not to and then lock it down.
Yeah, I think also within operations is really understanding how important communication and clarity is. A lot of times what happens is we build reports and then this person builds a report and then this person builds a report. And they're all trying to measure the same thing, but all using different data to get it. And so, when not only are they using different things, but now there's confusion on, well, what data is the right data, And so having clarity, having transparency from the top even is really important. So we're all looking at the same data and working toward the same goal. I think it gets really confusing if it's not just written as here are the metrics that we are measuring. Here is what we are driving toward. Here is how you measure it, right? Yeah. And that there's something really simple for them to use.
Yeah, every company has quirks too. So I like having a centralized data dictionary.
Yep.
You can't always lock reporting down, so you might as well give people the knowledge they need to run the same numbers. And that's including things like, hey, we have a partner account record type that shouldn't be included in any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Just like the weird one-off stuff.
Yeah. And I think with that on the RevOps co-op Slack, I think there was actually somebody that posted a whole RevOps dictionary in general. So in addition to what is unique to your business, there is actually an entire dictionary on every.
I think that was my glossary.
Might have been. And some of it is really funny because it's stuff that we think about that probably isn't appropriate for this podcast, but like different terms on there. We're like, yeah, I get that.
Well, I'm glad my humor was appreciated because I get sneaking things in there.
Yeah.
SSDD. Yeah, we all in there. So another thing, you mentioned reporting briefly. I would love to promote that for folks. I think it's really important for people to understand how they build things impacts the stuff that comes out of it.
Yep.
Like multi-pick select lists, like there's a reason why most of us are like, just don't do it.
Yeah. Just run. Yeah.
Yeah, so get yourself a developer org, make a few of those, enter some data, and then try to make a report on it, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
So as you've gained these technical skills, what are some of the side benefits you've seen in your career?
I will say, I think it's really put me in contention in roles because of what I've learned from a technical perspective. Process is really important. Operationalizing it is even more important. You can build process all day long. If you can't operationalize it, there's nothing you can do with it. And the process will continue to be broken. And so I think for me, where it's been a real game changer is the fact that I can take the technology and operationalize it in a really sophisticated way, because I understand how the technology works and how it's going to work with other tools. So I think that's really, really helped to propel my career because I have that knowledge, and I'm getting, I've been able to work with people that I've continued to work with at other companies because of that skill set.
Yep.
And they bring me in as an expert for that particular function. And it's been really beneficial. And I've been able to see really awesome improvements at companies that I've worked with and consulted with. And it's been really fun to watch that happen.
Absolutely. And I can echo that. I've been honored to be dragged along with people to their next adventure.
Yeah, 100%.
You establish a reputation as a fixer, and being able to be objective and look at the big picture and try to figure out cause and effect, and then come up with recommendations to fix it. And that's a huge skill that goes beyond just the technology. I love that you made that point.
Yeah. And I think too, something that's really worth noting is that just because something worked at one company doesn't mean it works at another. And what tends to happen is somebody comes in, they're like, oh, I did this here, so we're going to do this there. And the way that companies measure things are very different from company A to company B. Yep. And so it's really, important to your point, stay objective. And what happens is you get to learn even more on how these different technologies work and how you can leverage them in different ways that you couldn't at this other company because you didn't need to, or it wasn't, it wasn't anything that really showed itself, if you will. And so like being able to really like dig in based on what the company's goals are, not your goals, that can change everything.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too. I've seen companies exhibit the same exact symptom, but the cause was totally different. So I was brought in to fix inside sales to field sales handoffs at two different companies with really low conversion rates. The first company, the issue was the technology was implemented, so it was actually slowing everybody down. And in the other company, they didn't prioritize their leads. So a web form was treated exactly the same as content syndication, and they were just getting flooded with stuff that converted at like 2%. So
right.
Like being able to step back, and you can have a theory anytime somebody comes to you with a problem, but keep your mind open because you might be really surprised at what actually happens.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what also comes out of that is being able to use radical candor and tact to explain, hey, here's why this is happening, but don't ever go without a solution.
Yes.
To go and just say, hey, there's a problem here. Bye. Like, isn't really going to help anybody, right? And so you could have an idea, and it may not be the best idea. You may not know what it is, but at least have some kind of solution, because all that's going to do, it's going to breed ideas out of other people's minds. And I think that's what's really important is 2 heads are greater than 1, 4 are greater than 2. And really being able to have that tact and use that radical candor to go have meaningful and productive conversations that, hey, I see how we're doing this. I don't think this is the right way. Here's my evidence to show why. And here's my alternative solution, right? And that really just gets people thinking and gets people talking. And we have to be okay with saying no and with challenging the status quo, this is how we've always done it mentality. That's part of our job in operations, is to come up and challenge that and make our company better.
Absolutely. And I think that comes back to a really good point, that having more technical skills and having experience in different situations better equips you to say no.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that was something it took me a while to learn. And as you get more confident in understanding these tools and understand what they can or can't do is really important. I think it also shows you what can end up happening based on certain things that you do. And so you learn to say no, not because you feel like saying no that day, but there's a valid reason. Here's the alternative. I understand what you're trying to do. I don't think that's the best option. So here's some alternatives to how we can get that done.
Yeah. Yes, but is a good option too. I always started with, well, anything's possible, but let's dig into what you need exactly. And it takes a while to learn how to do that. I remember early in my career, somebody explained to me how something was set up, and I'm like, oh, why would you want to do it that way? Well, they were the person who did that.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason. So when you go into a new organization and things are a mess, be careful what you say in front of whom, and then also don't assume that they were an idiot for doing it. Assume that they
gotta assume positive intent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, ultimately, I think we're all out there to do the same thing and help our company realize more revenue. And like you said, like, make the assumption that they meant well at the very least. And I think a step beyond that is make the assumption that there was a reason they had to do it that way at the time, and that may have changed.
Yeah. And I think like developing the expertise in there is just incredibly helpful in the ability to say no, because a lot of times what happens is your users will come to you and say, hey, I need a field that does this. What are you trying to solve for? And I mean it in the nicest way. Don't tell me what you need, what the solution is.
Yes.
Tell me what you're trying to accomplish, because as you get more comfortable in understanding the technology, sure, you could do it that way, but what's the best approach that is going to require the least amount of maintenance in the long term and continue to allow us to scale, right?
Or, maybe your enrichment tool is already piping that data in, and it's just not elevated in a way that the person sees it. Like,
absolutely.
Sometimes it's that simple. So speaking of saying no, do you have any advice for people who need to do a little managing up?
Oh man, it's kind of funny because it's really something that I'm really cognizant of, and something like my team, I manage my expectations. I'm going to do it on purpose because I'm going to try and push you, right? And so I'm going to give you deadlines that probably don't make that much sense. Keep me in line. It's okay to say no. We've all got expectations, and we're going to try and push you forward. It's okay to say no. Just say, give us the alternative. Here's when I think I can get this done. Here's why. I think another big piece with just saying no is prioritization. If everything's important. So if everything's important, nothing is important. So being able to have the ability to say no and say, hey, I can do this, but here's the things that are going to fall to the wayside a little bit.
Exactly.
It's really proper expectation setting, right? And for me, I'm a people pleaser. So there are times where I even struggle with that, but it's such a vital, it's such a vital component so that you don't go stir crazy, because operations never ends. There is no job that's ever finished with that. It's continuous iteration and refinement. And so being able to set expectations properly is going to be the key to that. And that's how I help my team out. I encourage them to say no. Tell me no, and tell me why, and tell me what the alternative is. I'm going to challenge them to do that. And I encourage others to do the same. I think when you say no as well, you get them thinking outside the box and get them thinking differently. It's all about tone. It's 90% what you say, or 90%. Yeah, it's 90% tone of voice, 10% what you say. And so I think leveraging that with saying no is really, really important, and making that conversation effective.
Yeah. And I've had the misfortune of working for some extreme workaholics
Hmm.
who were okay being away from their family on weekends. They'd leave work at like 10, 11 at night. And it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I need a project management system, and we're going to put everything you're asking me to do in there, and we're going to put it up on a board with how much
Hmm.
time each of them takes. And you're going to be able to visualize the 18 P1 must drop everything things you've given me and pick five to do
Yep.
like at a given time. And then we'll go from there. So sometimes you have to be a little more extreme depending on how extreme your boss is.
Well, and I think, again, that leads back to transparency. A lot of times they don't understand all their stuff. Well, there's two things. One, they don't understand all the things they're asking for. Like they don't realize it because they just keep asking for things and it gets lost in translation and
And you
whatever
usually
else.
hear it as
Yes.
the just
Yes.
word. I'm like, ugh.
And there's not a full understanding of what it all actually entails. And I
Yep.
think that's really where the key is. If you're able to clearly articulate what all is actually involved, they're never going to fully understand because they're not doing it. But at least giving them some high level insight and overview of what that is going to help. And I think it's going to help the case of saying no and saying, here's when I can get this done based on this.
Yeah, minimizing how much effort you're putting into something doesn't do you any favors.
No.
And and celebrating and communicating big changes and wins, that goes a long way. But yeah, be really 100% be transparent. You're just hurting yourself if you're not.
Yeah, I mean, it if you're working that much and trying to do all that stuff at once, you'll never catch up. The work's going to be there tomorrow. And I
Yep.
mean, worst you can do is get burnt out and then you're not effective to your organization at all. And so making sure there's a work-life balance involved in that, and understanding where the limits are is really important so you can continue to be effective and help them.
Yeah, and we're not all wired to work until 11 p.m. every day and need to
No.
set some boundaries, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
Love it. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. Where can people
Yeah.
find you online to network?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also part of RevOps Co-op as well as Pavilion. So I'm on there. I usually try and jump on and really help answer technical questions more than anything. I'm really a fan of contributing to the network as much as I can.
Wonderful. Thank you. For people looking for more content, check out the RevOps Co-op blog and other articles.